Hey, Rufus.
Jeff, so good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for being a part of this conversation for Icicle Creek Artist Talk, and it's interesting. I've watched you. You develop this company and this approach over a number of years, and from the beginnings a little bit to where it's come today. And so I'm excited to dive in a little more and hear more about kind of your creative process and what's happening with this organization and where you're going. So thanks for being here.
Well, my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so you've described this operation as an idea factory, and I think that fits, distilling complex stories to their essence, and that does seem to really fit with what you do and the kind of work you do. And you've done some phenomenally interesting films, documentaries. Lifted, this kind of crazy film about the history of Mission Ridge over its first 50 years, the era of megafires, which has been massively impactful in terms of helping us all understand wildfire, what's happening, and how we might dig ourselves out of the kind of mess we've created as a society. Right. The Apple Blossom Festival. I mean, it goes on and on. So, done some great stuff. But before we dive into the work, and let's talk a little bit about your background, kind of the journey, how you got here, because it's not a typical journey.
No, probably not. Although I think everybody has an interesting story of their life. I mean, briefly, I grew up in Wenatchee. I was actually raised on an apple and pear farm. Went away to school. Didn't really have an idea what I wanted to do, but I went to the Family Tradition College, PLU, over in Tacoma, and at one point was thinking about medical school and ended up getting a degree in psychology. A very useful thing is a 4-year degree in psychology in the world. You're basically prepared to do some barista work, maybe. Bartending is a really good one.
All right.
I actually landed a job right out of college where I was a therapist. I was more on the kind of a technician, but I was a biofeedback therapist, and eventually got to the point where I was treating patients and working on stress-related disorders and things like that. But part of that, and I think that's why it's relevant to talk about it, is that part of that degree was learning how to talk to people and how to ask questions and how to draw story out of people. Typically in psychology, it's something pathological and a problem we're trying to work through. But the skill set of having a conversation and trying to get people to talk about themselves or something emotionally charged or difficult, I fall back on that all the time. And so it was a very relevant part of my background. After that, I actually went into the fruit industry for almost 10 years, working with my family, raising organic fruit out in the basin. And that was a really interesting time as well, managing at one point up to 100 people, and using spreadsheets and bottom lines and P&Ls and finance and all these things. Really was an education just in business, because we started off so small, but we grew. So I got to see sort of business at both ends. And then ultimately, I was in a band with a friend, and he was doing video production, but didn't really have a lot of business experience. And I was pretty much done with the fruit industry and wanted to do something else that wasn't related so much to weather conditions and fruit conditions. And we decided to start a video production company together, and that was in 2006. And that went well, and after a giant project, which was probably to date maybe even our biggest production film called Pedal Driven,
right.
My partner decided he was done, and I bought him out and just kept the whole thing going. We changed our name, but it was really ostensibly the same company, all the same staff except for my partner, and we kept on doing the same things. So I don't know if that's a weird background, but
it's an interesting background. And what's interesting about, I think, that every single one of the projects you do is there's real meaning. It looks like you've spent a lot of time digging into not just telling a superficial story, but something that resonates at a deeper level. Can you talk a little bit about kind of
Sure.
How that's?
I have to say one of the most Well, one of the things I'm most thankful about is the ability to work with people and companies and organizations that I want to work with. We have done very little corporate advertising, and we almost, not entirely, but I would say a vast majority of the projects we do are either projects we want to do ourselves, or we're working for a nonprofit that we care about the topic. So that has led us to work for a bunch of Native American tribes, and that is the state government all around salmon and restoring salmon, working with the Forest Service and other NGOs around wildfire education. We get to have some fun too and market the PUD, but we've been really fortunate that we work with people that we support the mission. And that's really important to me, and I hope I have that fortune to continue to do that through the rest of my career. But it comes down to caring. It comes down to, if I care about the people I'm working for and I care about their mission. So let's say it's a tribe trying to save salmon. Like I wouldn't say I could care as much as they do, because they care more than anyone. But I really care. I really, really want to help them tell that story. I really want to see the change that the media could elicit. That's when I get really excited. And that's another part of why I love what I do. I mean, I kind of always felt that I could contribute in any process. So whether it's at a psychology clinic or a fruit warehouse or making film, I feel like I can contribute. But my day-to-day, the projects, we have 11 projects open right now, and they're all vastly different, and they're in different parts of the state and even in the Northwest, and they're different people telling different stories. So it's incredibly interesting, too, to be able to dive into these different topics, or the story about a nonprofit, or the story about a person. It's so much fun to be able to learn about all these different things all the time. And I think, to answer your question, what it comes down to is caring. It's like I get so engrossed and involved in these stories that I feel attached to them. I feel a part of them. I feel it's not just I'm doing this for a paycheck. It is absolutely I've dug in to these topics and really enjoy and find a tremendous sense of fulfillment in telling them.
It also seems to me that when you're doing this, I'm guessing that you are telling the story back to the client in a way that they probably haven't ever thought about.
That is absolutely true. I think when you hire North 40, when you get the most value out of us is to share the big picture with us. Like, what are you trying to do at a really high level? What is your big goal? What is the thing you really want to achieve here? Who are you talking to, and what is the story? And then let's not get bogged down by saying, well, it must be a documentary or it must be an animation, because that's the only thing we do. We have, over the years, it's always been a source of a little bit of friction. Is like, what do we actually do? Because we can do narrative work, we can do narrated work, we can do animation, we can do documentary, we can do combinations of those things. And for a while it was kind of confusing, like what are we trying to market and what are we trying to do? But now we find that we can go into a new client, sort of figure out what their overall goals are, understand the complexity of their audience. What is their mission? How are they trying to connect with them? Where are they trying to connect with them? Because that's a huge part of what we do now is the media interface, the platform. So we have to figure all that stuff out. And then it becomes pretty clear a certain way is going to be more successful. And then we can help guide the what we might call an approach for a certain client in a certain place. So if for example, if you want to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Mission Ridge, but you want to get people out to a theater and a big group and excitement and enthusiasm, because together we get have more excitement, you do a long form. But if you were just trying to advertise that Mission Ridge is, the new lift is open, maybe a 30-second spot, and think about where those people are going to see that message. Is it TV? Is it social media? All these things kind of come to bear. But I think, again, back to sort of what I think the value of North 40 is that we try our best to look at the big picture and then find solutions that are going to work for this particular case, because every case is different.
And what actually the expertise that you have, the guys you work with, talk about kind of how you structure things, what they bring to the table.
If working with different clients and different projects all the time is a big source of fun and excitement and challenge, who you work with is also super important. And over the years, North 40 has had probably 14 or 15 people that have been at some point part of a project that we've done. And that includes people like Charlie Voris.
Yep.
He has worked with us on projects because we thought it was exactly the right thing. We actually took him down to Austin, Texas, and we did a commercial for the city of Austin. And we needed Charlie. So we took Charlie with us, which was really fun. We have editors now that are in LA. Charles went to film school in LA, and he's got friends from college, 10 years now that are professionals in the industry, and sometimes we're looking for that. It's evolved too. And there was a time when North 40 had 6 full-time employees, and we had 4 people who could be a director. And so you would basically say, okay, this is going to be your project, this is going to be your project, this is going to be your project, and then we'd all go our separate ways and come back together and talk. But now it's actually a fairly specific process where Charles, my partner, and I sit down and do you want me to talk about our process?
Yeah. Yes.
So Charles and I will, as the principals at North 40, we go in and we meet with the client and we figure out everything we can about the client and about their story. So if it's a new client, we're going to do some research on them. We're going to want to know what they've done in the past media-wise, what has been successful, what has been a failure. We're going to want really dig in deep and figure out what very specific message, what are their goals to share, and with whom and where. So we're really digging in, trying to find out as much as we possibly can. And if it's something to do with fish, or in this last case where we were working with the tribes in Klamath about their endemic suckerfish that are going extinct. So you have to learn some biology, and you have to get to really understand. And then you do pre-interviews. So Charles and I go down and we find out as much as we can, and then we come back with our proposal. Like, this is what we think we should do. And it could be a couple 30-second spots, or it could be a 20-minute documentary, it could be a hour-and-a-half long documentary, it could be an animation. So we're basically trying to use media to answer the problem. And that's how we engage with our clients on a proposal level and say, well, this is acceptable to you, this amount of money for this amount of work. And we're pretty good at guesstimating in the end what that cost might be, we hope. And then we start writing, So then if it's scripted, we have to write a script. If it's a documentary style, we have to write a script treatment. But it's really then, what are the story beats? And we follow a very traditional form of story, is that you have hooks, and you have climaxes, and you have resolution, and you have the elixir, and this has been since Homer, since the Iliad, right? It has been this sort of study of story, and we try to follow that as best we can. So we create our story, and then we figure out who is going to tell us that story, and that could be a bunch of interviews, or that could be something scripted, and then once you have that, clearly you get approval from the client, and then you go out and you film it. And the production side of things is very intensive, and we're sort of known for our guerrilla tactic of we can go film anywhere. So we throw all our gear on our carts, and we go into the van, and we travel wherever we need to travel, and we get the footage we need to get. And then then you're in post-production land, where everything gets loaded into the computer, and you spend days upon days upon days chained to a desk and trying to tease out the story and the most emotional aspects of it. And then we go through several different cuts. We go through what's called a content or a radio cut. It's just really about what they say. Looks terrible, but it says everything. and then you add B-roll, which we have a B-roll cut, and B-roll is just any imagery that's not associated with the dialogue or the main story being driven forward. And then we usually pass that by our clients to see how they feel about it. And then from there, we're doing polish on color correction so that everything kind of looks the same brightness, and blues look like blues, and of course a bunch of sound editing. Of course, soundtrack is a critical part of what we do as well. And then titles and things like that. And then just kind of there's always that last 3 or 4% that you got to polish and polish and polish to get to the finish line, and then you deliver. So it's quite a process.
Yeah, some of the films you've done, the projects. I think of the Lummies,
Right.
all the work you did with the Cherry Point,
Yep.
the coal, a huge coal operation that was proposed that was going to tremendously impact. But I thought the meat of that story and the telling it from the heart and emotion of the tribes and their standing up to to the SSA,
Right.
and I thought it was just really well done. What was that experience like for you in that project?
Wow, that's a great question. I think, that project was really interesting, and it was really frustrating. Oftentimes when we're in this genre of salmon restoration or environmental concerns, it's really frustrating to think about people behaving badly. And here is this Lummi nation who has been there for 10,000 years, and they don't own their land anymore. And I get that. They've signed treaties, they've ceded their land, they have reservations, but they also have a lot of rights that came with those legal treaties. And watching people just abuse that and literally just deciding they're going to go bulldoze out a wetland because it's going to make their job easier, at the expense of these people who are actually really great, nice, considerate, surprisingly considerate after all they've been through people. It just makes you mad. It really makes you mad. That obviously I get passionate about it, and that's, start to put myself in that, I put myself into the work because I want to tell that story because I was so frustrated. And it was just one example of 1,000 atrocities that happen every day in our country when people just sort of, and it's not just always about Native Americans, it's just about people abusing other people and getting away with it. And so oftentimes I dig in and try to tell that story because we need to know. Yeah.
Well, that was a great. I thought it was so effective. The imagery on that, when the guys, he's piloting the boat up the river, and you got the sense of the natural resource and what was really at risk there, and you show the coal trains and then talk about the wetlands issue where they just went in and bulldozed things,
Yeah.
And yet that in the spirit of their how much they care, right, about their tribe and about the environment in this pristine area. I just thought it really worked well.
Well, thank you. I think that there's two things I really like to mention about that. And one is one of the most fundamental things about what I do, and it's way bigger than what we do as filmmakers, but it's the human's ability to empathize. Mm-hmm. So empathize is not just feeling sorry for somebody, it's being happy with them, it's being sad with them, it's being angry with them. And we all have it to some varying degree or not, but it is a very common trait, is that we all have this ability to emote with somebody else. And so it's our job to make sure that our subjects are emoting in a way that other people can emote with them, so they can empathize with them. Mm-hmm. So we want them to be emotional and be angry. And when the engineers come back and say, we're not going to let them do it, just the sense of joy that they have.
Yeah.
So it's our job to create a story that people can emote with, right, to be a part of, and to care with somebody. And that is so critical to what we do. It is so fundamental. And that really leads to why I think documentary film is such a high form of art. And I certainly wouldn't judge that it's better than something else, but to me, it is a critical form of art to share other people's life experience. So with film, I can share with you a tragic story of the Lummi Nation basically being pushed aside while somebody wants to put a 80-acre coal terminal on their ancient burial ground. But if you could read that, maybe. I mean, but being able to share that person's emotion and the way they spoke and the way they looked and the way they talked and the way they felt, I think you walk away a better person. You walk away having an experience that you wouldn't otherwise have been able to have. And that goes for any documentary. And it doesn't have to be some environmental tragedy. I mean, like, I don't know if you saw, what was that film about the beekeeper, you know, the lady in Turkey, the beekeeper. It's like, what a simple story of this woman who's keeping bees out in the middle of nowhere. But you get to share her life. You get to see the world through her eyes. You get to see what makes her happy, what makes her sad, what does she find satisfying. And that makes us better people. Like, that is what I love about documentary filmmaking.
And that's the meaning of the work. Is that at the end kind of what drives your passion for continuing to do this work?
Well, it definitely does. I mean, I love the day-to-day. I love the people I work with. I love the people I work for. So I'm super fortunate that way. But in the idea that I'm able to share other people's lives with a large mass of people, I hope, helping those other people see a bigger world, expand their understanding of what it means. That ability to empathize creates a world where we can live together. You know, it's like I can understand you a little bit better, and then therefore I don't hate you or I want to do mean things to you. And I think that that's true. I mean, I think that when you see a good film that shares a different culture, a different ideology, a different viewpoint, you can't help but grow, and that's super critical. I mean, I think there's another answer to that question, which is a fairly different one, and that is, to me, in preparing for this interview, I was thinking about sort of the difference between creativity and art.
Right.
And I think that creativity to me is actually a word that doesn't have a lot of meaning. I don't really focus in on that word. To me, that's just problem solving. But art is kind of that place where creativity and craft meet.
Right.
And to me, we talk about this all the time, is we're not necessarily being creative all the time. We're craftsmen. We're learning and we're improving. It's a skill set. It's something that we approach every day, and we want to get better at it, and we're always trying to get better at it. So it really has a lot to do with craft. Over, say, something like, we're just inherently super creative people, so we come in here and everything we do is great. Like, no, not at all. It's like, going back to the days of being in a band and writing music, it's like you have to write 30 terrible songs before one is even listenable, right? I mean, people just don't go, I'm an amazing songwriter, right? No, it takes practice.
Right.
It takes rehearsal. It takes technique. It takes all these things. And they talk a lot of, like, see that saying, what is it, 5% creativity, 95% perspiration.
Right.
It's exactly right. I mean, it really is about the 10,000 hours to become an expert.
Right.
And I mean, I can almost calculate, I've been doing this 10,000 hours, and that was really the first time I felt confident enough to be a director of something, So the last piece of the puzzle for me is, and I think this is almost every artist would have to admit to some degree, they're concerned about the audience.
Right.
And yes, you could go paint beautiful masterpieces by yourself in a room and never show them to anybody. That's a really, really small percentage. First of all, you never get paid if you do that. And the second is that art is about, to me, is about sharing that with an audience. And for the film production, obviously that's a digital audience in a theater or on their computer or whatever. For the musician in me, that's like rocking out on stage with a whole bunch of happy dancing people. Like, there's nothing better that I can think of in an artistic capacity than jamming, having a blast playing music on a stage and having 100 people dancing and singing with you. Like that's the best.
That's it right there.
That's the cherry on top for sure.
Yeah. You've been so involved in the community as well. Tread, this trails organization. You've the development of this mercantile building downtown, which has just become this great mecca for kind of co-working and for events when we used to be able to have events.
Right, for sure.
And involvement with the community. And I think that a lot of this kind of keeps looping back to, caring for the community, the place, the people. You mentioned, helping people empathize with and seeing other viewpoints without just dismissing them, right? Which we see enough of that, right, in politics and in life.
Right.
Just check social media for that. But all these things, there's a caring, it seems to me, that of kind of wanting to make the place better, right?
Yeah.
And is that something you spend time thinking about as you select projects and approaches?
Well, certainly the sense of place and caring about the place is something that I think about a lot around volunteerism and around projects that we take on. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily for clients, but for the projects we decided we want to do. I mean, Lifted's a great example of that. Is, to me, at 50 years, what I felt was really relevant was somebody built that thing, which is a chairlift, and then all these communities came together around that thing. And I also feel very strongly that if people care about something, they take care of that thing. And if it's when people don't care about something that they start to abuse it, misuse it. And so that actually applies to the PUD. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's incredibly important that we all understand the value of the PUD to this community, and we should care about it. And then we can preserve it and take care of it. Same thing with the land. I mean, that's what Tread's all about, is that we have this fantastic list of assets that, from the river to, to the Columbia, to the Wenatchee, to the Sage Hills and the trails and Mission Ridge, and I mean, just so on and so on. But we're getting overrun. I mean, and that's already happened in our, to our neighbors like Chelan and Leavenworth. They're getting overrun with people who don't care. So it's super important for us as the sort of stewards of this area right now is to make sure that we can share that culture of caring and help them understand this. If you're going to show up on our trails, we have some things we expect you to do, and we're happy to share them, but don't mess with them. Don't throw your trash, and don't, all these things that people who don't care. So I think a lot of the base of the things that I do as far as volunteering and, of course, some of these projects is really trying to connect people to the place so that they care about it. And if they care about it, they pass that on, and hopefully they take care of it. That's the key, I think.
But beautiful. Is there one project that you've done that you're sort of this really? I mean, they all, I'm sure, have meaning to you. But is there one project that really lights your fire?
Oh, I have a terrible answer to that question. And that's the next one.
The next one, yes, yeah.
Gosh, that is. There are so many fun projects and so many. I mean, and when I say fun, I don't mean like laugh at fun. I mean challenging and fulfilling and hard and all the things that a project should be. There are certainly highlights. For me, one of the most fun things we did, and the sharing, I can think of two really amazing sharing experiences when we actually played hot metal for you
Right.
and your dad and your family and all the linemen. That was one of the most emotional displays of something we had done. Even though I'd have to say that we're much better at that craft now, it was still a huge deal to tell this story because it was their story, right? I mean, there is always that sort of responsibility that you feel to get it right. I had a blast doing the Lifted.
Yeah.
That was super fun. So was the a lot of fuss about a parade.
Right, the parade,
Apple
the
Blossom.
Apple Blossom Parade.
That was probably the most fun filming something, because we spent a year with those people, just with the royalty and Darcy and staff, and we really got to know, probably at a depth that we never had before. Probably the very best work that we've ever done is for the Klamath tribes, and that's going to be on Southern Oregon Public Broadcasting here in March.
Nice.
It's our best work. I mean, it's craft-wise. I think we did our best work there.
Yeah.
We're also doing a documentary that I am super excited about that is in post-production, and it's called The Last Ride of the Show Ponies. And the Show Ponies
Right.
are a band,
Right.
and they were people that came through Wenatchee every once in a while. And Charles, my partner, was very connected to them. And they became a professional band and toured all over the country for about 7 years, and then they broke up. And instead of just breaking up like most bands do, they decided to do a goodbye tour. And so we filmed them on the 4 stops of their tour, and we just talked to them about, when do you sort of readjust your dreams in
Right.
life and what you want out of life? When do you make those big changes?
Right.
And how do you make those big changes, and what do they mean? And as somebody who's been in a band that is no longer in a band, I thought it was incredibly relevant. But you also get a sense for what it's like to be a touring band, because that's kind of a novel thing. So we get to share this sort of life experience that they had, and all the reasons why you give up on a dream or change what you want. And so that's in process right now. So I am really excited about actually doing a review, because I'm not editing it. I don't edit very much anymore. I kind of supervise somebody editing, so it's fun to watch it evolve. But I'm looking forward to seeing some cuts on that this week.
Well, Jeff, you've had just a remarkable run here since 2006 of taking the skill set you've built before that time and creating a company and an approach that has done some marvelous work and lifted. Hot Metal was the one about the printers of the Wenatchee world, and that was just such a. I remember. Watching that, and every time I do watch it, it's just I see more things. It just means so much to all the folks that work down there, and it was in that crazy time. But all these things really, I think, reflect this creative mindset that you are one of the creatives and caring creatives that aren't just doing things for the transaction, but trying to make the place a bit better. And I think I really admire that about your work, and it's just been fun to watch you apply your skills and knowledge, throughout the community in different arenas, and especially here at North 40 and in this amazing building, the Mercantile, downtown Wenatchee, and what that means for the valley. So, thank you for rich discussion. It's always fun,
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it. And this Icicle Creek Artist Talk series is all about trying to help people to explore with people their art, and thank you for doing so with me today.
Oh, my pleasure, Rufus. I really enjoyed it.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah.